Good afternoon. Have you ever had a feeling or an emotion that you wished you didn't have? Have you ever been in a situation where an event occurred and just like a fuse was lit, a trigger was pulled, a button was pushed, the event occurred and the emotion and the behavior followed it and you wished it didn't? Maybe it was even destructive or just uncomfortable. But you're getting an emotion or from an event that you wish you didn't have. Well, almost everybody has. And this afternoon, we're going to take a look at exactly where these emotions come from. I'm going to give you a question that you can use to determine whether you should change the emotion, because I don't advocate eliminating all negative emotions. And then, if you decide you want to make a change, I'm going to give you another question you can use to make a permanent change so that you no longer get that reaction from that event. So let's get started with a question. You're driving down the highway and you come to an intersection, and in the intersection is a traffic signal, and at the time you get there, the signal is yellow. What does the yellow signal mean? Now, I know from a legal standpoint it means theoretically slow down and prepare to stop. But what does it mean to you? Are you a speeder-upper? Come on, all the speeder-uppers, raise your hand. There's no police presence here, so you can admit it. And how many are slower downers? And how many are contextualists, right? So it depends. How fast is the rest of the traffic going? How fast are you going? Is there a police presence at the intersection? Are you in a hurry? Is it an emergency? Because here's the point. The yellow traffic light means nothing other than the meaning you assign to it at the time you encounter it. And this is the great truth that we're going to explore this afternoon. Events and objects have absolutely no meaning other than the ones you assign to it. Let's take a couple examples. The first example is my wife. Now, my wife is adopted, and from that experience, she's taken the meaning that her mother, her birth mother, must have loved her very much. I mean, if you think about it, you wouldn't easily give up your baby. You would only do it if it was for the baby's own good and you loved it very much. So she's taken that meaning from it and never really questioned it or searched out her birth mother, always taken her adoptive parents to be her true parents. And she's grown up to be a happy, healthy, normal person because of this. And a few years ago, I was at a Tony Robbins event. And if you've ever been to a Tony event, there's thousands of people there. And so from the stage, he says, is there anybody in the room who's chronically depressed? And of course, hands go up all over the room because statistically, 7% of the room is going to be chronically depressed. And he picks a lady and he says to me, says to her, tell me, ma'am, why are you chronically depressed? And she says, because my mother didn't love me. Well, how do you know your mother didn't love you? Well, my mother didn't love me because she put me up for adoption. So my question to you this afternoon is, does being put up for adoption mean your mother loved you or that your mother didn't love you? Pick one at a very early age, unconsciously, and let it control the rest of your life. A few years ago, I was talking to my daughter, and I said, hey, honey, do you want to go to the Devon Horse Show? Now, she loves horses. She has a horse, and I enjoy watching them jump, and all the Olympic riders are going to be at Devon. So she said, yeah, sure, Dad, you get the tickets. I'll take the day off. Now, a few months later, she texted me and said, hey, Dad, I'm looking forward to going to the show on Thursday. You got the tickets. Uh-oh. I said I'd get the tickets, but I forgot. So I go online to get the tickets, and what's it say? I call up the box office to get the tickets, and what do they tell me? So I talk to the lady on the phone, and I find out that sitting right there on her desk is a set of tickets that somebody has ordered but has not paid for, and she is tired of chasing that person to get them to pay for those tickets, so she sells them to me. And I think, way to go, dude. I mean, that's the way to use your skill set so that you can get your daughter and yourself to the show. I go home, and I tell my wife about it, and she says, honey, you the man. Way to go. Way to use your skill set. Way to go. But if I told my daughter what had happened, what would she say? Maybe not quite the same reaction, would it be? Because events in themselves have absolutely no meaning other than what you assign to them. Another good example is what's going on in the National Football League right now, where some of the players are taking a knee during the national anthem. What does taking a knee mean? To some people it means one thing, to some people it means another thing, And the event in itself is just taking a knee. It's just an event that means nothing. But yet one group assigns a meaning and another group assigns a different meaning, and we've got this huge conflict going on in the country and in the sport because of this. The truth is the Star-Spangled Banner, the national anthem, means nothing either. If you play that song in Canada, it has no effect. It's just a song. So other than the meaning we assign to it, it doesn't mean anything. And we've all been in these situations, haven't we, where an event occurs and different people in the room at the same time take away completely different meanings. So let's take a look at exactly how this works and then how you can use this knowledge to manage your own emotions. So it all starts with an event. From the event flows the meaning, from the meaning flows the emotion, and from the emotion flows the behavior. Let's break it down piece by piece and take a look at each one of them individually. So we start with the event. Now, the event can be an event that's a current event. And so you text somebody and they don't answer you back, and boom, you assign a meaning to it, and you get an emotion, and you realize that they never did like you anyhow, and that's why they're not texting you back. Or somebody's leaving their dirty laundry laying around, and you see that dirty laundry laying there one more time, and boom, you get an emotion from it because you assign a meaning to it. It can be immediate like that. Or it can be from a long time ago. Maybe it's the way your parents raised you, and you've got these feelings and emotions in your present life from way back in the past. Or maybe it's a guilt about an event from the past, and it's something you did or didn't do 20 or 30 years ago, and you've still got this emotion and feeling that flows from that. Now, what do you do about it? Because there's a lot of conflicting advice about what you do about this. And so some people say, well, if you've got this emotion that you don't want to have, just forget the event. But really, I don't think that forgetting the event is a practical solution, because sometimes events are important that you remember them. You've got to extract the learning from the past and use it to protect you in the present. If you've ever been in an abusive situation, it's a bad idea to forget about it, because what you learned from that, you extract the learning from it and you use it to protect you in the present. What if the event that's causing the emotion is the death of a loved one? You don't want to forget about the death of your loved one and pretend that they're still alive. That's not a good strategy at all. So forgetting about the event in order to manage the emotion is not a good strategy. Also, sometimes people will say, well, just change the way you think about it. And I wouldn't completely discount that, but you've got to be extremely careful about changing memories of events. So the second thing is you've got the meaning that's assigned, and we're going to come back to this in a minute. Now, the third step in it is the emotion. And sometimes people will say, well, all you need to do is just suppress the emotion. So if the emotion is anger, they might advise you, they might say, well, just take a deep breath or count to 10. And how do those things work? They don't work very well, because what you're doing is you're using a conscious behavior to manage an unconscious emotion. The sequence of event, meaning, emotion is so fast that by the time you get around to using your conscious mind to manage it, it's gone, it's happened, it's already done. So using a conscious strategy that takes focus and energy to manage an unconscious emotion is not a good strategy, not a viable strategy. And then the fourth thing we get is sometimes we get behaviors from the emotion. And somebody says, well, just don't do that anymore. Well, you know what? If you could just not do it anymore, you wouldn't, would you? But it's so automatic the way this sequence flows that it happens. So none of those are viable strategies. The question is, what do you do? Well, I recommend you come over here to the meaning box. And let's take a look inside of the meaning box and see how you can examine the meaning and decide whether you want to make a change in it. And then if you want to make a change, you can make a change that will change the emotion and how the sequence flows. So the first thing you want to do is you want to decide what the event is that's causing the emotion. Now, many times, and in fact, I would say even most times, you know what the event is, because this happens, boom, you feel that way, and perhaps a behavior falls. But sometimes you don't. So you need to ask yourself this question: what happens right before I feel this way? What happens right before I feel this way? To make sure that you identify it. And it could be a physical event where somebody says something or something happens, or it could just be a thought process that causes you to feel that way. So you identify what it is that's making you feel that way. The second thing you do is you ask yourself this question: what does this mean? What meaning are you assigning to that event? Because when the action occurs, you're assigning a meaning whether you consciously know what it is or not. It's happening. Then the third question comes up, and this question is critically important. Is this serving me well? Is this serving me well? Because I don't advocate getting rid of all negative emotions. Sometimes you need to keep them. Sometimes having that negative emotion is a warning or it's something useful that you don't necessarily want to get rid of. But if you decide that you want to change the emotion that flows from the event, I'm going to give you the way to do it right now. The way you do it is by asking yourself this question: what else could this mean? What else could this mean? So you've identified the event, you've identified the meaning you've assigned to it, you've decided whether you want to make a change or not so that you're doing it on purpose, and then you ask yourself, what else could this mean? And what will happen is simply discovering other potential meanings will start to shake it loose. You can completely change the meaning if you want to. You don't have to. Just determining that there are other possible meanings will start to loosen the flow of the emotion. So let's take a look at this in a real-life example. I'll give you an example from my business. Now, years ago, I had a software company, and I was in business with another person, and I would buy and resell their products. Now, this was not our normal business model. We usually just created our own products. But in this case, I was reselling from somebody else. And we were getting a 15% commission. And I decided that, you know what, I need to make more money, so I'm going to call up the CEO of the other company, and I'm going to negotiate a higher commission. So I call him up, I negotiate 25% commission instead of 15% commission because I convince him that it will make up for it on volume what he's losing on percentage. He agrees to it. He says, draw up the papers, send them over to me, I'll sign them. So I draw them up, I send them over to him, they come back signed except for one thing. He crossed out 25% and wrote in 19. So now here's the question, what does this mean? The event occurs, 25 is changed to 19, and I assign a meaning to that. Now what meaning do I assign to it? Why, this dirty little SOB is trying to cheat me. I never did like this guy. I always thought he was a little bit slimy, and now I've got proof, and I am hot. Right? So the event occurs, he changes 25 to 19, I assign the meaning that he's trying to cheat me, and I get hot. And what behavior flows from that? Oh, give me that email, because I'm going to flame this guy, I'm going to melt his monitor, I'm going to let him know what I really think, and I'm going to tell him a thing or two or three or four or five. I don't care if I ever do business with him again, because that's what's going to happen after I flame him. So let's think it through. The event occurs. We're not going to pretend like the event occurred. He did change 25 to 19, but I'm going to come over into this box and I'm going to say, oh, okay, I've identified the event. I know the meaning I'm assigning to it. Is this meaning serving me well? So is it going to serve me well if I go up in smoke and I destroy our relationship? Probably not. So the question now is, what else could this mean? What else could this mean? So tell me, crowd, what else could it mean besides that he was trying to cheat me? Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe it's an honest misunderstanding. Maybe he changed his mind. Maybe there's somebody else in the organization who's got authority and I didn't realize it. So let's play with it a little bit. Let's say that I decide consciously that I'm going to assign the meaning that it's just an honest mistake. So the event occurred, I assign the meaning of honest mistake instead of cheating me. What's my emotion now? Well, it's a lot softer. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm thrilled about this, but I'm no longer flaming red hot about it. So I'm kind of like, well, you know, let's see what I can do about it. I'm in problem-solving mode. I'm a lot softer. So what kind of email do I send him? Hey, I think that, you know, maybe you made a little mistake. What's going on? Let's talk about it. Which is a whole different way of managing the situation. So the next time you're confronted with an emotion that doesn't serve you well, I challenge you to stop and think. What's the event that's causing it? What's the meaning that you're assigning to the event? Is the emotion serving you well? And if not, drop back here into the meaning box and take a look at what you're assigning to it. Now, I want to answer a question that comes up all the time when I talk about this. They say, people say to me, what if he really was trying to cheat you? Right? And honestly, if I'm just honest with you folks, I think that he really was trying to cheat me, because I've had previous business experience with this guy, and he's a scum, right? We were in a public situation, and he tried to intimidate me into taking off my tie and giving it to him in front of other people. This is the kind of person we're talking about. So was he really? Yes, I think he really was trying to cheat me. But the question is, does that serve me well? Or does it serve me better to maybe cut him the benefit of the doubt and say, you know what, I know the guy is generally a dirty, rotten scoundrel, but he probably just made an honest mistake, so that I get a little softer emotion and I don't destroy a profitable business relationship. So I just challenge you that even if you're sure that it's the reality, still consider, does that serve you well? Well, that's my advice to you this afternoon, and now I've got a question. How can you put this to use? In fact, I imagine that most people, while I'm talking about this, have already thought of an emotion that's not serving them well. And they've thought about what's causing it and what meaning they're assigning to it. And I know some of you have probably already made a change in the meaning to an event. So I challenge you and I encourage you to use this information in the future. If you haven't used it today, use it in the future to manage the events of your life and the emotions of your life. And I look forward to hearing your story of success. Thank you.